Did you know that you can now create GitHub issues from Copilot chats in github.com? Let's imagine we're part of the product team behind Copilot Airways, and we're assigning work to the engineering team. We've written a new product requirements document for user reviews on the travel guide. But the team stores these documents in Notion. Let's ask Copilot to create a GitHub issue with that information and a link to the Notion document, so they have traceability of the request. The Copilot coding agent can be assigned issues right from this view in Copilot Chat. Copilot acknowledges the assignment and gets to work by creating a pull request. But how will Copilot be able to access the product team's documentation in Notion? That is where the Model Context Protocol comes in. Aside from native tools like reading files, making code edits, running builds and tests, you can provide Copilot access to external tools using MCP, just like we are doing here with Notion. Here, you can see it used multiple tool calls to gather the information from Notion, which were then incorporated into its workflow. And if we navigate across to GitHub Actions, you can see that the MCP servers and associated tools are configured when Copilot is being set up. Once Copilot has completed its work, we can review the code in the pull request. However, this looks like a fairly sizable set of changes, so I could go back to the pull request and see how Copilot has summarized the changes it has made, allowing me to have the appropriate context going into a review. To learn more about the Copilot coding agent, check out gh.io/copilot/coding-agent.
Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. Thanks all for joining us today on this wonderful Open Source Friday here with Guillaume, co-founder, creator, and maintainer of Mockoon. We're excited for today. It's going to be a wonderful day and jump in and talk a little bit about the background of the project, learn a little bit around your journey into open source, as well as how to mock your APIs better with Mockoon. So excited to have you. And Guillaume, maybe a quick intro to yourself, and would love to hear how you're doing today.
Yeah, hello. Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here for the second time. Last time was in 2023, so it's a long time ago.
Long time.
Yeah, a lot of things changed, and yeah, so I'm like you say, the creator of Mockoon and the maintainer of Mockoon, and also now the founder of Mockoon Cloud. So it's a lot of hats that I'm wearing. And I'm fine today. I'm feeling well. It's evening here, so I'm a bit tired, ready for the weekend. But yeah,
ready for the weekend. Well, hopefully we're not the only thing standing in front of the weekend and some fun. Maybe for folks that didn't get to hear your session a couple years ago, could you just give a little bit of background to how you got into software development and open source, and maybe even just kind of the origins of Mockoon?
Yeah. So I have maybe a strange background. I was a lawyer until 2015, and then I switched careers. Yeah, I was a lawyer specialized in intellectual property, privacy, patents, things like that. And I started coding in high school, so it's an old passion, and I was doing that, every evening, weekends, and it was taking nearly all my free time. And in 2015, I realized that I really liked being a lawyer, but I loved I wasn't a developer, only as a hobby, but I loved the development. And I decided to switch careers. And now, I'm telling the same old story every time I see someone, but now it's 10 years later. And I've been a full stack developer for the past 10 years, so it's really old, and I probably should stop telling this story. But that's the background. And I was working in
I
a
mean, I
bank.
think it's never too late to say that's the background of where you're getting, even if it's
Yeah.
it's part of the journey. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's great.
true. And it's also a good skill to have when you're building a cloud. I will probably say a word about that later. And so I'm in Luxembourg. I'm living there, and I was working in a bank. No, nearly 8 years ago. Yeah, 8 years ago. Yeah, 2025. And we needed an API mocking tool. You know, it's always the same story. Scratch your own itch. You need something, and you are a developer, so you look at the alternatives, what you can use. We couldn't use the cloud, so we couldn't use Postman, for example. And
Hmm.
because you are a developer, you really want a side project to swallow all your free time. So I started a side project 8 years ago, and I did it. I did several small startups before that. All failed. Otherwise, I will not be working anymore. Um, but what I did, I tried to create an MVP real quick, like in August 2017. And then in September or October, I'm not sure anymore, I published that, or I posted something on Hacker News, Reddit, the usual places. And I said, hey,
Hmm.
I created an API mocking tool. Um, what do you think about it? And it wasn't open source. Maybe I wanted to sell it, like maybe one-time purchase. I wasn't sure. It wasn't open source at the beginning, and the feedback was good. It was really a surprise. People were like, "Yeah, well, it's a nice tool. A lot of things are missing, obviously, but it's really nice, and we like the interface, etc., etc." And one person asked, "Is it open source?" And at that time, I had a repository with only the issues, so no code, and so you could open the issues and track the request changes, feature requests, etc. And I said, yeah, no, it's not open source, but I don't know why it's not open source. I have an idea. I have this idea of maybe selling it at one point, but yeah, why not making it open source? And I was probably guilty at that point of seeing open source as a nice or good way to market it, or to increase the reach of the tool, which is probably a side effect of open source. And now 8 years later, I'm a um, passionate advocate for open source. I really like open source, and even if I'm building a cloud right now, I would rather see the cloud fail than, for example, making Mockoon Cloud source closed source.
Sure.
So, yeah, that's 8 years of journey, and it didn't start immediately as open source, but now it is, and
I
that's
love it. And maybe, you touched on the beginning of the journey of not just making it open source and kind of the feedback that you got, but maybe, you want to share how you've thought through building in community and kind of engagement into the open source community to accelerate the project itself, and maybe any features that you've recently launched that you're excited and proud about.
yeah. So building a community. This is a complicated question because it's really complicated. I mean, it's hard to build a community. It's easy, it's like building a startup after all. An open source project, it's first some lines of code, and you publish the code, and then it's open source, and that's enough. That's the
Hmm.
more or less the definition of open source. You choose a license. I choose MIT, and then that's it. You publish it. But then if it becomes a little bit popular, if people are using it, if you get feedback, if you get feature requests, if people opening issues for bugs, etc.,
Hmm.
soon you feel that you need to maintain it, and your ego is here telling you, "Oh, you have something popular, keep it alive." And that's for me, that's where it started. And you don't necessarily want to spend all your evenings fixing bugs and
Right.
answering support requests for free. That's also another question in open source, the sustainability. But that's probably the first step to build a community. You answer the request, you provide support, you add more features, you fix bugs, and yeah, sooner than later you become the benevolent dictator for life, like. And but that's a journey. It starts like that, and then you start writing content, and you open a Discord channel, and you test a lot of things because you want the project. You want the project to grow. You want it to be more popular. I mean, at least for me, that because that's a good feeling.
Sure.
That's overwhelming, but that's also a good feeling. So that's how I guess you start a community by accident, and
The
then you continue.
accidental community manager that you didn't know that you were gonna be doing.
Yeah,
I mean, I
exactly.
think that's a very common kind of maintainer story. Is to your point, you scratch an itch, you build a tool that solves
Yeah,
your problem, and then you start managing a community. And the interesting thing about it too is it's a little bit of a push and pull because you have folks that are sharing feedback, contributing to the project, for example, and kind of help guiding it, but at the same time it does put a lot on your shoulders. And when you're a solo maintainer kind of building things out, ultimately, like, it does require building a community around yourself to be able to manage that. I mean, I'm curious, like, how you've thought about the project growing, how you've been able to balance your own needs as a maintainer, as well as like growing the community.
yeah. Um, yeah. It's a good question. Finding the right balance. If I understand the question correctly.
Yeah, like the balance of like time and commitment to a project when you're
Yeah.
still like you have other things going on too.
Yeah, yeah. That there is a saying also. A lot of people are saying, when someone says, "Yeah, I'm fixing bugs and answering support requests, but I'm not paid," and then that's a big issue in open source right now. And a
Sure.
lot of people are saying, you don't have to do the support for free. Easier said than done, because if you don't do the support, if you don't fix the bugs, the project will die. That's it.
Hmm.
That's a fact. I mean, take a library not updated since 2 years and with support requests everywhere and unanswered. People will just go away and find something else. So unless you want it to die, you have to work on it. And then you have to find the right balance. And if you have a daytime job, it's complicated. If you have a family, it's complicated. And yeah, I had a burnout in 2021. That's also why I'm full time on Mockoon since 4 years, which was also let's say a tough choice, but no, it's more successful than not. So I think it was the good call at that time. But yeah, you have to think to find the right balance, and it's also quite complicated to onboard maintainers, to
Hmm.
share with the burden with other people. Um, Probably for two reasons. One, myself or yourself, because I mean, it's as much as you would like to share, it's your baby, and it's also you working on this project for years, so you know it by heart, and
Yeah.
you have a vision for it. Um, it's probably easier for you to fix the bug than anyone else. And that's it. It's just really hard to delegate. And then it's really hard to find the right person to delegate, because, I mean, the other person passing by, they also
Hmm.
have their lives. They have a job, and contributing to open source is not a full-time job, but it's really complicated because it's not just opening an issue. If you want to fix it, you need to dig into the code, to understand the code, and probably you won't understand it, so you need explanation, and then you need the pull request, write the tests and everything, and write the documentation. And then if you want to step up as a frequent contributor, be onboarded, you have to do that frequently, and it's just a lot of work, and a lot of people are not ready for that, and it's perfectly normal. They have a life, and so it's
Well, to
really
your
hard
point,
to
it's
share.
not just a lot of work; it's a lot of maturity that someone has to step in, and like it's
Yeah.
another level of ownership that you need for folks to be able to do that. Maybe like kind of going a little bit further into your journey. I know going in through the GitHub Accelerator. Maybe talk a little bit about what that meant for you as a maintainer and kind of the things that you learned, and then maybe even a little bit around the community that you were able to build around with that.
Yeah. Yeah, we were talking just before the stream started, and yeah, the accelerator was a fantastic experience, and there is a big difference between massive open source projects like maybe Vue.js or or Linux, because there is a foundation behind that, and it may give the false impression that sustainability financing open source is a solved issue, which is not, because the vast majority of maintainers get absolutely no funding and no help. So it's really complicated. And yeah, sorry, what was the question? Yeah, I speak too much.
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious, like how programs like that, and also funding, I guess, to that point, have helped you
Yeah,
stay motivated
accelerator.
within it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, sorry, I completely missed the
Totally
target.
okay. It's
Yeah,
Friday evening
no.
for
So
you, right?
and yeah, what I wanted to say is that for Mockoon is, let's say, a mid-size project. So it's popular with tens of thousands of monthly active users in big companies. So it's not definitely not small, but it's definitely not Vue.js. So you are in between everything. So it's really hard to get funding, like public funding, research funding, and but still the project is not unknown. But it's still complicated. So getting into the accelerator, the GitHub accelerator in 2023 was first a fantastic experience, because I was among other maintainers, but way more advanced with way bigger projects. So I learned a lot. And here I'm in the middle of nowhere in Luxembourg. I mean, it's not nowhere, but in the
Not nowhere,
countryside.
but yeah.
Yeah, and participating in an accelerator like that, it was fantastic. So, and what was good also is that it forced me to reflect also on where I was going with this project. I was also starting building the cloud at the time, so the paid cloud.
Yeah,
So
I
it
remember
was a
that.
good exercise, to reflect a little bit and start to understand where I was going with that.
Yeah, maybe double clicking on the balance of the open source project with the cloud product. Like, how are you thinking through like balancing your time with those things when you have to think about, to your point, helping bring funding to the open source project, but
Yeah.
using this as a core revenue source?
Yeah. Yeah, this is a very good question. I started blogging a little bit about that on the Mockoon's blog.
Hmm.
Last year, it was a matter of life and death for the project. Let's be honest. I'm full time now on Mockoon since 4 years, and I was freelancing on the side. So Mockoon was or is my main focus, and I'm freelancing.
Hmm.
The only thing is it's not sustainable if you want to to go to the next level, let's say, with a product. You need money to to arrive one way or the other, and
Yeah.
donation, sponsorship, it's really hard. It's really hard to convince companies to pay. So I got some sponsors, but it was never enough, even if it was sometimes some sizable amounts. Not even speaking about the GitHub Accelerator, which I put aside because it was, let's say, a huge amount of money compared to what the project got since the beginning.
Hmm.
But then, full time, you need a full time salary to pay your bills. So building the cloud was an answer to the sustainability question. And I knew that some users were interested, and so I jumped. But it's really complicated. But no, it's starting to. I mean, it's working and it's growing, and it's, let's say, the future of Mockoon is nearly secured. I can say that it's on the right
That's
track
awesome.
to be
That's huge.
secured. Yeah, and when I say secured, it's one, I want to keep it independent. I don't want to raise funds, and I want it to stay MIT license as long
Hmm.
as possible. So building the cloud and finding the right balance, between the open source part and the cloud without betraying the community is very important for me. And
That's great.
yeah, I think I'm on the right track, but it's hard to find the balance. And no, I can say, and it's on the blog, Mockoon Cloud is the priority. So
That's
I'm
awesome to
adding,
hear.
yeah, I'm adding features, I'm fixing bugs, etc. But the cloud is definitely the priority. Otherwise, and we are a very small team, so I'm starting getting help from some part-time people. I want to onboard them also full-time, but without focusing on the cloud. It's just that at one point we will all stop, and we will also probably stop working on the open source project too.
That makes sense. And,
Yeah.
and I guess like part of that too, like, you might be spending more time in cloud, but I imagine some of the feature sets will roll into the core projects. Like maybe you want to walk the folks through kind of the core features of the project, both in terms of the open source, but also cloud in terms of like use cases that folks are using Mockoon for, and like what does like typical development look like for the project and both the open source and the cloud version.
Yeah. I will show in the demo the main features. Let's say there are a lot of them, but I will try to focus on the most important one. What I try to do also is to have the same set of features in the local version, desktop version, and in the cloud. And the cloud is using the same libraries minus some adjustments. And I think it's important. People expect things to work out of the box, and
That's
a
true.
lot of people, I know, a lot of people paying for the cloud are coming from the local offline version.
Yeah.
So they expect to find the same things. So you are right. When there is a new feature, it will be later in the cloud, and sometimes it starts with the cloud and it's de facto in the local version too. So of course, they both serve the other, and building something for the open source version. It's the traditional hosted, self-hosted model. So I didn't invent anything. Of course, it can be hard to find the right balance. It can also be tempting to paywall, some features in the desktop application, which I try to avoid. For now, the paying features are the one that requires a cloud, like cloud deployments, like real-time team collaboration. And I will try as much as possible to avoid to gray out a button and to ask for a payment if the button can work locally. So it's I think it's not that hard to find this balance. But,
Yeah, that's great. Maybe before we jump in, actually, there's an interesting question that I was going to tee up, but how do you see tools like Mockoon evolving with AI-driven API development, also with like MCP or even like agent mocking, which I think is a really interesting question, facing a lot of development right now. So, and I'd be curious, like, if you put thought into how that fits into the general open source project today.
Yeah, it's a good question. AI everywhere. So there is a small AI assistant in Mockoon, which was launched. It was the first cloud feature in 2023, but it was also probably a pretext to create a cloud, or the first. It's a wrapper around ChatGPT, so it's not a big feature, but it was also a way to start, this cloud thing. So historically, Mockoon was really appealing to people working in highly regulated environments. So banking, finance, and that's also curiously most of the cloud clients or customers. But they really like the local first thing, privacy friendly, So adding AI also was a tough question. Do you want AI everywhere in the software? There is also a small movement. I'm not sure it's that massive, but of people who don't really want AI everywhere, and or maybe they want to be able to enable it only if they want. So it's not the priority. We also have a roadmap long, like the I don't know, gigantic.
Yeah, I imagine. Never
So
ending.
MCPs, and it's really tempting, and it's really interesting, but there are so many things that we have to tackle right now, and also with the cloud, we have to find the right maturity for enterprises, with a lot of things like airbag, etc. But yeah, it's a good question, and in API mocking, you can generate things automatically up to a point, like a dynamic template, some routes like, post users, and then you have a dynamic response. But when it comes to more complex logic, like you have a root guard, things I will demo later, a root guard that ensures that you are authenticated, and then, data manipulations, stateful mocking, and things like that. It's more complex to generate something with an AI. No sooner than, or no, not later than like 1 hour ago, I tried Copilot to fix a bug in some circular JSON generation thing, and it failed 3 or 4 times because it's not a lot of code, not that complicated when you code, but it's a complex topic in terms of thinking about it. So
Sure.
I don't know. Things will evolve, of course.
I imagine part of that's like
Yeah.
driven, you have to have the right evals in place to have the right outcomes for it, because, if it's not fully deterministic for the JSON payloads that you're trying to create, or like the actual mock, so you're not going to get the right outcomes to have, right?
Yeah.
But that's an interesting one. I mean, maybe, future iteration for when and how you handle it is actually like having those native evals embedded into Mockoon as a service so that people can test and make sure they get more deterministic outcomes
Yeah.
from it. I can see that being kind of interesting. So that's awesome. Maybe if you're up for it, would love to shift gears to the demo and have you just jump into the project. We can spotlight the
Yep.
screen and your demo.
Sure. Up, sharing my screen. But yeah, the AI thing, is a very good question. Probably things will be fully automated in some years. That's probably the where we are going.
Yep. Cool. We got your screen and your demo ready to go.
Yep.
So let's have some fun.
Okay. So Mockoon is making a 2 promises, or a double promise. I don't know how to say that. Be really simple to use. You can create a mock really quickly, but also be a powerful API mocking tool, and that's what that was what I wanted at the beginning. Because
Very
there
cool.
are some tools focused on API design, for example.
Yeah.
Let's say Stoplight or Postman, which are also doing an API mocking. They have an API mocking features, but it's let's say more limited. Not that I want to sell Mockoon, but even Stoplight suggested Mockoon in one of their guide, because generating API mocks from an open API specification works up to a point, but in the specification you cannot define rules, templating, and things like that. So I wanted an API mocking first tool, which is a choice, and it
a good
raises a lot of
differentiation too, and kind of like allowing just some heavy users that want to do more mocking specifically to kind of get a really good experience on it. I love it.
Exactly. Yeah, that was the goal. So there are a lot of options that are not really in the open API specification, like rules, templating.
Can you zoom in just a little bit, just so that folks can see a little bit, if that's possible?
Yeah, I'm not sure I can do that. It's zoom at the
Okay, no
maximum.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds good.
Okay. Yeah, I need to open a feature request to
You're
add
good.
some more zoom levels. Yeah,
Yeah.
I will do that.
Sounds
It's
good.
not the first time someone asks, so probably there is something there.
Well, when you join the show next time, you'll have Zoom features implemented and ready to rock.
Yeah, in 2 years.
Yep.
Okay, so simplicity. So the idea here, you will see that you have a local section, which means that's the desktop application, by the way. Okay, there is also a web application for the cloud customers right now. So it's only for the cloud customers, but the historic version is the desktop one.
Okay.
If you want to mock something, you can quickly. Okay, this one already exists. Yeah, replace. I don't care. Let's call it demo. You can create an API. So that's a mock API. You already have an endpoint. Let's call it test. And let's answer with OK. And let's press play. And you have an API mock running locally. And if you open it in your browser, you will see that it's immediately answering. That's the simplicity part, okay? And
it's about as fast as you can spin up a mock that I've seen. That's great.
thank you. And in the cloud, it's more or less the same thing.
Okay.
So I have a demo here that I will show you just after. But if you want to deploy in the cloud, you can, in 2 clicks, GitHub, well, yeah, it's not GitHub demo, but GitHub, I forget the B. But you have immediately running mock, and this time it's in the cloud, and it's running on our servers.
Very cool.
So the idea here is to have something that is really, really simple to use, and you can, be up and running in nearly no time. And that's probably the easiest way to start with API mocking, because a lot of people don't know this technique, and they are not sure what they can do with that. And what is really cool is that you can mock an HTTP endpoint, for example, in 2 seconds, and you can start working right away. You don't have to tinker in your service to return JSON, and then forget the JSON when you commit and you have testing code in the production. So it's really practical for that. And then
maybe one question that came up that I'll spotlight, but being able to summarize the synchronous collaboration kind of development and then your deployment, I think there's an interesting thing, like once you've done your deployment to the cloud, how do you stay in sync with any other mocks that you're building on the local environment, and just keeping those consistent?
Yeah. So when you are using the local mocks, each mock is stored in a JSON file on my hard drive, and you can easily commit that in Git, for example. And that's one way to collaborate. And because we build a cloud, in the cloud we have real-time collaboration. So I won't open 2 windows side by side, but it's like in any other application. You see here I'm connected. If I have a coworker who connects, I will see a second avatar here, and I will see every time you create a new route, a new folder. If you update a response, it will be synchronized in real time on all the clients connected.
Super cool.
And then when you deploy in the cloud, you deploy to the cloud, and it makes the instance available on one of our subdomain. So it's immediately shareable or available to your coworkers, clients for demos, etc. And when you work locally, you saw that I pressed play before, so it's running a local server on localhost. And from there, you are free to expose that using a tunnel, like VS Code tunnels or Grok. That's one way to do it. And we also have a CLI, so you can deploy your mock for testing, because that's the other aspect of API mocking. Of course, the first thing we think about is a front-end team, a back-end team, and the back-end is not ready, or the API is not done yet, and then front-end needs to work. That's, let's say, the most obvious case. And for that, you need mostly something local.
Sure.
And then there are the other use cases, automated tests. So you want to write tests, but you don't control the API. It's a third-party API, for example. It's a, let's say, Stripe API. But you don't want to go all the time to the Stripe sandbox and try to trigger errors or things like that. So you can simulate them easily in an API mocking tool. And then you can run your test against that. And the last, probably even more important use cases for companies are the API sandbox or sandboxes.
Sure.
They have an API production. They don't really want to maintain a test environment or a, let's say, sandbox demo environment for their clients. So they want a mock sandbox, and they want
Sure.
something that simulates. It's realistic enough. It's good for demos. It's good for integration, onboarding. But it's not the real thing, but it's good enough, and that's also
I mean, I'd say for a lot
a
of
use case.
platform teams, that actually is a really helpful thing to do,
Yeah,
because to your point, like the amount of time spent maintaining a dev environment is not always worth the bang, especially for smaller platform teams and things like that. So I think that makes a ton of sense. I really like that use case.
yeah, exactly. And I think most of our cloud customers are either using it for tests, automated tests, or sandboxes.
Very cool. Someone actually had a question too that I'll throw up on the screen, but how important do you think local first development tools will be in the future of software engineering? I actually, like, maybe a hot take personally before you jump in, is I think it's going to become increasingly important because of the reasons that we're talking about. I mean, you're going to end up with some really interesting local first for like data privacy, especially into your point of like banks, also
Yeah,
like the ability for teams to test. So I personally think it's really exciting, and I think it's going to accelerate. But curious your thoughts.
yeah. And still, I'm building a cloud.
Yeah, well, you need
Okay.
it. Like once it's hosted, you'll need a cloud environment, right? Like people still need to interact with
Yeah.
APIs, and yeah. So
No,
but I
it's
think that yeah. Go ahead.
yeah. No, it's a very good question, and I think on Hacker News yesterday or the day before there was a discussion. I don't remember the title, but if you search local offline first or something like that, you will find it, and it was more or less what happened to local first. And someone said, I didn't read most of it, but the first comments were like, yeah, I mean, it's working well until you have to share something with someone.
Yes.
And I needed Mockoon, I needed something privacy friendly, local first. And then some people, some users asked for team collaboration, and then
Hmm.
suddenly it was a need, and now we have a cloud, so we came full circle. The first need was we cannot use the cloud, we need something else, and now we are building a
Now
cloud.
you
So
have a cloud.
yeah, I'm not sure what to say. I think it's both important and both, I mean, and not important. Well, I think what is important is to know where the data is going,
Hmm.
what is going where, in probably in which jurisdiction. That's also important.
Sure.
And to have an exit plan, or like in the cloud, we always say,
Hmm.
there is vendor lock-in. You need a plan when you have to exit the cloud or change or switch to another cloud. I think it's true with any tool, and we should have or be, how can I say that, anti-fragile or something like that. Be ready to
Sure.
switch, because anything can happen all the time. So,
I'd be
but
curious, like as your clients, like you kind of mentioned there, there's a maturity curve that they like start local, then they want the collaboration, but then they still have this like feedback loop of like start local, go to cloud. And so, and I think that's kind of what I think about is when I say it's going to accelerate, is because I actually think people are going to need that start local, move fast, go really quickly. But then the moment you need to go collaborate with a team or a partner, or you're
yeah,
using a third party API, like you're going to end up having to be in a cloud environment too. So you're going to end up with this, feedback loop that I think is very interesting for Mockoon to think about in the future as well.
yeah, yeah. I mean, if you work with Mockoon with a team, you get the need for a bit more, really quickly. I mean,
Hmm.
collaboration. I mean, you can do it through Git, but it's not always ideal, especially when you are sharing JSON file. If you
Sure.
try, you will see that it's working up to a point. Um, then yes, I mean, the product. I mean, we are also lucky that we are only dealing with test and development data, which means that it's a bit less critical than production data. We are not dealing with personal information. Um,
Hmm.
so that's also a big plus. We can provide a cloud. Of course, there is a lot of security involved and a lot of
Hmm.
compliance, but still it's a bit more relaxed. And even if you really like offline first, local first, when it's for testing purposes, it's easier to go for the cloud, and to pay like $30, $100 to get it deployed automatically. versus doing it yourself with the Docker image, because it's time, and time is money. So yeah.
It's also, yeah, I mean, even with like setting up Docker image for all that, it's like it's complexity too. I mean, it's not just time, but I mean, and obviously that all kind of comes into it. But I mean, going back to your first part of the demo, just how easy it was to stand this up and build a mock, you know?
Yeah. So building a mock is easy. It's easy locally. It's easy in the cloud. In the cloud, I can just create a new cloud environment and click on deploy, like I did before. So it's also 2 or 3 clicks. But the idea is that it's also a very powerful tool, and I won't show all the features, otherwise we will drown, I guess. But some of the most important one. One thing that I like is that we can create what I call guards routes. There is another name for that. I'm not sure. Interceptors, or it depends on the ecosystem you are evolving in. But guard, I love Angular, and Mockoon is built with Angular.
Cool.
Since 8 years. So
well, I'd be curious,
guards
like
are.
when you started that, I'm curious, like how you thought about Angular for your project in general versus like looking at other frameworks itself.
Yeah, it was already my main tool, daily tool, or daily framework at work,
Sure.
also for hobbies. So, I mean, for me, I didn't want to learn something new. I wanted to ship something fast. So,
Yep, that makes
yeah.
sense. That's great.
So you can create a guard route here, for example, using or binding on all methods, all HTTP methods, with a wildcard. So it will catch all the routes. And basically what it does, it will protect all the routes and expect the user or the caller to use an API key.
Okay.
So for that, I have one response with a rule, and the rule is checking, we'll enlarge a little bit, is checking that the authorization header is equal to, no, it's an inverted rule because the response is a 401, unauthorized. And it will check if the API key is not present in the header because it's a inverted equals.
Right.
And the API key is stored in what we call data buckets, which are stateful mocks.
Cool.
Stateful JSON databases. So there is a.
So you can consistently have that and be able to like, keep the key data that you'll need for that stateful API.
Yeah, exactly. And here I could use also templating to generate a UUID or something like that. But I wanted to keep it simple.
Cool.
So the route will ensure that we can only call if we have an authorization header. I can test that immediately. Here, trying to call the get users without the authorization header, and I will get an unauthorized answer. And if I put the header, I get a 200 because the guard route will pass through. We call that the fallback mode. So it will go to the next route. So the next routes will get evaluated, and the users, here is what we call a CRUD route. So it's basically a replacement for mock servers. JSON server, if you know it, the library. It's tied to the data bucket system. And here you will see we linked the data bucket users, and we have an array, and we can store users. Because the CRUD route is creating all the get, put, post, delete, put/id, etc. All the routes necessary to create some CRUD behavior.
And is that out of the box that you offer that ability to just like quickly, offer the scaffolding for a CRUD route within this scaffolding, or do you have to like individually create all of these? Cool.
No. You see it's here, CRUD, and then you can. Let's call it templates. You can create another CRUD route and you link it to a data bucket, and that's it. And you restart the server.
Very cool. And then from there, like you can change your ordering depending on like the calls or the actual sequencing that you want to have, or does this automatically come out of the box? Cool.
Yeah. So you can see here the users. There is one user by default, and I get, when I get users, of course, I will get an array of users. And when I post a new user, I prepared everything. I won't type, otherwise we will be there until midnight. And I post a new user, and when I get again, I get two users, and I can check here the live status in the memory of the data bucket, and I can see that we have now two users, and there is pagination, filtering, search, and things like that.
That's awesome. Do you have to like set those up within the API itself, or like I guess like how do you think about pagination or like features that you would like not always add within the API itself?
Sorry, I'm not sure I understand the
Yeah, I'm just
question.
curious, like for something like pagination specifically, like are you
Yeah.
like does the offer of your mocking service automatically enable those, or does the developer have to think through and be like, oh, what other things do I need to add to make this fully functional for
Ye-
my users?
Yeah, no. It's for the CRUD routes. Everything is done already. You can see here all the
Cool.
routes created,
Yep.
and all the operators you can use when you search. But it's a bit opinionated because I mean the CRUD route cannot do everything and anything. So
Sure.
we had to choose some um, property names and things like that. So
Yep.
yeah. So the CRUD routes
That's
are
helpful.
yeah.
It's kind of nice to have this like construct where people can easily learn and at least get moving quickly, and then if they have to iterate off of that, they can. But
Yeah.
I like this out of the box. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's nice also to prototype. You know, if
Hmm.
you quickly need to create, you want to create an invoice application, or you are teaching, for example. I'm teaching sometimes in Luxembourg here,
Sure.
and it's really easy, to create a slash invoices CRUD route, and that's it. You have something working.
Hmm. I love
And
it. I'm going to
yeah,
spotlight a question because it kind of dovetails with that. But could you explain how to use Mockoon to simulate microservices, which is exactly that? Like you create this microservice and you're going to pull up an API, but you want to do like a prototype. Seems like a really good example. Like out of the box, you have some pretty
yeah,
good core features of an API that you would normally have to build if you were to go build like a Docker container for your microservice and go off the bat.
yeah. Yeah, it's a very broad question. I know some users simulating microservices. Um, it depends. Um, it depends of I mean what you mean exactly. Um, I know that one thing that is interesting is that there is also a callback slash webhook feature. So if you need to simulate some kind of microservice advertising themselves,
Hmm.
you can do that. When you start, you can bind a callback to a route, and you can have configuration routes. You can imagine a lot of things because there is a lot of scripting. So
Hmm.
um, I mean, yeah, microservice. It's a tough question, but you can create a lot of small APIs. Yeah, but
Sure.
um, but then the logic behind. I mean, what I always say is you have to know when to mock and when to stop mocking. Because
It should be
maintaining a mock,
your tagline: when to mock and when not to mock.
yeah. I mean, but our interest is to mock at the maximum,
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but maintaining a mock is also can be a lot of time if it's highly
Sure.
dynamic, with a lot of logic, rules, callbacks, etc. I know some users with crazy setups. Uh, but sometimes it's too much, so you have to find the right balance. And yeah, it depends what your microservices have, or what they are doing exactly, how they are interacting. um, I think it's a lot of questions about the interactions between the API mocks, and I think for
Hmm.
that we have a lot of solutions to be able to script, like the webhooks, or the global variables, to be able
Hmm.
to store some state, so you can create feature flags system, for example. So you can have
That's
a
cool.
service doing the feature flags, and all the other services calling this feature flag system. And it's quite easy because um, Yeah, let's write it here, but you basically just need to do something like a global variable test, and then you put a value, and this will be executed when you call this route. So you can call this route like enable flag, and the value can be true or something. And then when someone or some other API call this endpoint, the flag will be set to true. And so there is a lot of scripting too that you can do.
That's great. I'm going to spotlight one more question up here of advice on how to ensure the mock behaves like the actual API. And this is an interesting one. Kind of goes back to an earlier question, but I'm curious, like, how are your users doing this? How are you thinking
Yeah.
about it?
Yeah, and I will start with another question that I get all the time. Can we start from an Open API specification? And yes, I'm also revamping all this Open API thing that is a bit old. I mean, it's working, but it was done years ago. Yes, you can start. Yes, the Open API specification will be imported. It will create all the routes. It will even create some dynamic examples here based on the schema available in the specification. The only thing is that the specification has no system, or I mean, doesn't know about rules and things like that. It can create multiple responses, but they won't be dynamic because
Sure.
there is no idea of rules. And so if you coded a lot of things in your mock, for now, you will have to maintain it, so you will have to put that in your roadmap / workflow, write the code, write the docs, write the tests, and update the mock or something.
Yep.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Unless
So it
you
goes
have,
back to your when to mock and when to stop mocking.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Unless you have or you are using API mocking only for simple get routes, for example, or post routes that are not dynamic, it's also a possibility. You create a post route, and the request body goes nowhere. It's possible, and you just answer with a success like that, and you say, okay, let's call it a day. You answer with a 201. And that's it. It's behind the scene, nothing happens. That's also a possibility. And like that, Open API works really well. But if you want some kind of logic, like a sandbox, you want maybe people to, where am I now? Here, people to be able to create API keys, which is a possibility. Then the maintenance comes in, and you will have to work on it. Yeah, like any other part of your infrastructure, let's say. But sometimes it's really worth it. So
it makes sense. I'm going to flag another question here that's interesting, and you kind of addressed this. But how do you think about Mockoon when there's other open source tools that do this? And then in general, like, how do you think about the unique features compared to others? And I think you touched on this a lot. With this is more of a heavy power user mocking service versus maybe other like API spec design and things like that.
Yeah. First of all, Mockoon is free and open source, so it's part of all the other tools on the market that are free and open source. So why not use this one and not, versus the others, because it's more powerful. Yeah, I mean, what is the difference? There are many API mocking tools. There is a mock service worker, which is a library. It's highly popular. It's also a very different approach. It's a library, so you code your mocks. And here it's what you see is what you get, like in the 90s, like with Dreamweaver. And on the website, there is an interesting case study that I did a long time ago with Impala, which was, which is still a startup about hotels APIs. So it's an API as a product for hotel reservations. So they are selling an API. And they are selling that to whom? To developers. And what they were doing at that time with Mockoon was UX focus groups with Mockoon. So they were mocking their own API, and based on the feedback from the developers in the focus group, they were updating the API and then asking, is it better like that? Do you prefer this naming? Do you prefer this and that? And that's an interesting use case. And there are also people contacting us, not necessarily for the cloud, but because they want their sales people, for example, to use that during demos, etc. So yeah, because it's no code and it's still powerful. So I think it's appealing to a lot of people, like hardcore API mock developers, to salesperson, and I even know some designers using Mockoon with Figma to seed some fake data into Figma. So yeah,
that's great. That's a great use case.
and then maybe the question, sorry, was also why this. While there are a lot of free tools, so Mockoon is free and open source, so maybe there is an underlying question about the cloud. Why the cloud? First, for the team collaboration, because it's easier than to share on Git, push, pull, etc. Fix conflicts if you have some conflicts. It's automated. It's real time. And then the cloud deployments, because deploying Docker or opening ngrok is not always possible. It's also taking the time of the DevOps team or a lot of people. And then it's easier to pay for a cloud sometimes. Not saying it's mandatory or anything like that. And just
I
a
think you give
parenthesis,
people options too, right? It's kind of the core point of it, is like you need to you give users the choice of, do your own local free with solo mocking versus
exactly.
like yeah.
And when we launched the cloud, especially the new team collaboration and deployment features, in the blog post we said for existing users nothing changes. There is still the local section, absolutely nothing changed. And I think it's very important. I said I don't want to betray the community, and that's one important thing here. And we saw tools in the past, I won't name them, but they put everybody behind sign up, mandatory sign up. And it was a local first tool, and they got a lot of backlash for that. And I mean, it's perfectly normal. They should give the option, and here there is the option. So I mean, it needs to be sustainable, but I don't see a more honest way to do that. So I guess I hope it's good like that.
I like it. Well, I know we just have another minute left. Any last call outs that you want to share on the demo, or call outs for the folks listening of like how to get a hold of you or engage with the project or test Mockoon itself?
Yeah. So I guess I talked too much during the demo. I can only encourage you to check the tutorials, because you can also script a lot of things. You see, there are a lot of helpers like set data, etc. So you can simulate, like I said, feature flags and do a lot of things. Simulate webhooks, and you can see the logs. You can enable the proxy. We can do a lot of things with this tool. And if you want to try, you can just download it. It's here. Where is it? Here, desktop application. The CLI is here to help you deploy it in the cloud, in your cloud, in your infrastructure. And we have an extensive documentation about nearly everything, and a lot of tutorials. You can even simulate rate limiting.
That's cool.
That's the last tutorial. So you can script a lot of things if that's your thing. And don't hesitate to contact us on the GitHub repository. We have the discussions enabled, so you can ask questions, showcase something you did with Mockoon. And I'm also on LinkedIn, and you will find me really easily. It's Guillaume Monnet, like the name displayed on the YouTube video, and that's me with the sunglasses. And I think that's it. And yeah, come check it out. And
that's fantastic. Well, we will thank everyone for joining us today. And Guillaume, thanks again for walking us through this wonderful demo for Mockoon today and showing folks how to do local and cloud hosted mocking of their APIs and endpoints. So super cool. Thank you all for joining us today, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thanks all. Bye.